Hello, the riots in LA are connected to people interstates involved with triages at hospitals. And these are people involved with campuses. Hospitals are hospital campuses, regardless if they're private, etc. The difference of that was is measured and maintained, entertained by the subject treatment natures, the syntax natures at countries A through Z, leaving out the breaching methods roles with that and with the natures of industries A through Z. There is at least there are more than one directors, but there's one director and his workers involved with California and or Hollywood itself. I don't know if it's Hollywood itself, but it's with California per their syntax. Even if they made it up, they're involved with former director of the FBI Robert Luskin, various natures of courts, family members, and the state of Connecticut corrections officers and judicial branch officers. Jonathan Miano has a Jennifer Kennipici, also with a Mike Roberts. I didn't tell this to Jennifer Kennipici and her mother. See, these are intelligence families involved with triages and with the mental health care side, where they're putting fake transcripts there and then needing to hide that as collusions with all natures of crime scenes and with the databases at other campuses. I never had a class with a Jennifer Kennipici. She's involved also with many with a Joe Aiello and people with the name DeMoro and Miano, involved next to Hartford Hospital with the businesses and houses next to it, involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And even if and where though that's also juxtaposed with them as unmarked police forms or whatever, intelligence, foreign and domestic military, they have that rules with predicate same way, criminally foreign info, tactical delusions raw. And with Wethersfield Police forging and switching names. They put me in fake conversations with them with the Wethersfield Police when I was a kid, and that as an adult. So a bunch of people tied to what Jonathan Miano recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed he's involved with them with the databases, with criminally foreign influence, falsified police reports roles. He demonstrated this true. I didn't tell him about it. He sought me out to make confessions about this in 1994. In other words, and he is increasingly involved with a Larry Martin and others I don't know the names of with Central Connecticut State University in Britain, Connecticut, involved also with Cromwell locations and all along Route 3 and conjunctions to it and to that, like the state judicial branch offices and Elm Streets and Rocky Hill and Wethersfield. Increasingly, a Ray Cololo and other people that were put in classes with me have collusions intercities with the Elm Streets and Wethersfield and Rocky Hill and other conjunctions to Route 3 and to that. In other words, like a Joshua Schumack is also with Facebook pages of Wethersfield Police and the Britain Spirit Court collusion /S, also with people next to Hartford Hospital. Involved also with that girl reportedly dragged to her death from next to Hartford Hospital. With a Violet family and others from other areas that make confessions about them on my street. I never saw Joshua Julian or his mother on my street. I never had a conversation with his mother. These are people that take pictures of people next to others so they can put fake ties, fake natures ties to them, trying to make fake exceptions. And they're leaving out their collusion with /S, with proven child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart that they had roles forcing at first. Years apart too. A whole bunch of people tied to a Joshua Julian also with these names. And they said it has roles with him at the end of the 3 spots at the end of the Pearl and Turnpike they have together. I don't know. I never saw him there. I only saw Joshua Julian's picture on Facebook, and I remembered his name as one of the ones that were repeated to me by a stranger named Mark Violet, who sought me out with other strangers to make confessions and demonstrations of his roles with intelligence families near me before I even saw them connected. And I didn't even see him tied to the other ones. Only saw him tied to a Ray Claw about a handful of times. They demonstrated they're putting fake ties, fake nature ties to me with the Cololo family. Also involved with people with the name Scalora, with the World Trade Center attack interstates and internationally. And these are people involved with UConn a bunch of ways through time. A bunch of people with the family members and tied to the family members of people named Violet. are also with military that know my names. I don't know their names. I never had a conversation with them. They have roles with victims advocates from the British Superior Court involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and sexual and medical offenders of kids, forced leaders of the kids, involved with organized crimes with databases, collusions of the differences of the guilt use /S roles too. And that's with instances where they're building upon that. And so, and everyone's leaving out and self-valuing left out collusions with the hyperforeign, with names from off campuses through our own, even the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants and their family members are involved with criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents and exceptions relative. In other words, they have readings of statutes and precedents they can't afford to have. How they pay fake exceptions, value that, and have delusions manifest. So on a mass scale with courts across the country, they have been, evidence is racketeering worse than war crimes, communicating other than they pretend to communicate. In other words, and we can observe this. See, forgiveness is because if anyone leaves out the breaching method, they get it wrong exactly the way everyone needs. The breaching method needs that country's A through Z. Has styles, needs, and natures of logic, blaming other things, others dependent on other things, others ourselves, blame for things that it caused and keeps. Right through American history, where our founders communicated to us, they had declassified for us their communications about why and how they did not have free speech. Rather than have that value, we have the experts using their knowledge of good and evil of American history to get over on James Madison and those founding principles and natures. We have black people's whites of eyes. We have these means clearer than day to discern the experts on the natures. The experts on American history have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Fact, truth, nature, quality, aspects in nature worse than criminal competence, leaving out how we have black people's whites of eyes. We don't have to be lawyers too. The lawyers are relying upon American history experts replacing what our founders communicated. Nature shows us that communications is simultaneously greater than and more finite than what is said. Especially when no one had free speech, everyone had to pretend other to an extent /S. Otherwise, they were censored by the breaching method, including if there were a body of people, as a majority of people, including everyone was united. Everyone is united with black people's whites of eyes. We don't want that left out. The breaching method made and keeps all exceptions exception nature to be pretended their motivations, even to themselves. And it keeps delusions with people pretending that's debatable. In other words, we have hyper-evidential that could be used. So I don't know their names yet, but there was a bunch of boyfriends at the same time with a leasing agent's kid. I don't know his name yet. These are the people with the interbranch forging and switching names and fake conversations with me at the Wethersfield Police Department. And with the British Superior Court has rules with investigators with the FBI and other agencies at and next to Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut through time. On all sides of it, with names also at campuses I went to that were putting fake things, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, roles with the databases and then acting tied to it behind my back and make it look like I even knew them or was ever around them. They make sure they have self-valued roles with people hiding lies as styles, needs, and natures. They can't defend that. And or pretending using truths for lies and pretending not to realize they're using truths for lies and not realizing because you guys had our short words replaced what our founders wanted us to communicate, what they left declassified for us. Anyone who tries to debate that and how America's founders did not have free speech, they will have inherent to, active to, and progressive to. Their logic, their nature of logic, demonstration /S of the same. All trained. So you guys need to follow mandated law. So in other words, also the neighbors of a Jennifer Kennipici are increasingly involved with people on all sides of fields and parks and as the ones on all sides of campuses planting evidences, identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties, fake natures of ties to the kids, and they're building on that. Whiting forensics in Connecticut with state police families interstates. There are proofs that there are state police, and there are roles with generals associated with a schedule family. I never had a word of conversation with the schedule family. One of them pretended other with the Middletown locations, involved with a Miano family too, intercities, involved with courts, prosecutors, intelligence, foreign and domestic. So we need to get them on paper. When these are with the inter-campuses too, the educators of a John Miano and football coaches. The interbranch has been influencing. Some ways, criminal foreign influences influenced him, but some ways, his educators and the intelligence community tied to him influence him to fake things and be found behind my back. Increasingly, people tied to, like a John Miano, and people tied to my neighbors are involved with conversations with people at Newington locations, and like a golf course in Newington too, a private one, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with educators of a John Miano too, putting with their family members, apparently with intelligence, even if they're involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, identity thefts and frauds, slanders relative. And I caught them doing more with the principal child abuser and the news forcing roles. Also distinctly each news location. Like WTNH has their sources involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidences at the corners of the streets. These are also people with the Clintons involved with crimes with Russians and with confessions. Not just to me, to the breaching method. In other words, and the roles with fire departments with Russians and people named Peruta and people named O'Brien and Cololo involved with corners of the streets on Highcrest Street, a principal upskirt nature's campus. I recorded them doing way worse with him and with other family members of other proven child abusers, leaders of kids, and more recorded then and now involved intercities connected too. Also with the names next to the campuses, intercities connected to themselves, including as ones next to with intelligence next to Trinity College and next to Central Connecticut State University, are increasingly involved with federal evidences crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, with names from Wethersfield, on off the state judicial branch office and corrections offices, involved with wire crime acts and methods, predicate acts methods, identity theft, fraud, slanders, instances, fake motivations for it, two roles, screening their roles with a whole bunch of different countries. So in other words, too, they have a Paul DeMoro involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, from wire crimes. The only time I ever spoke with him, with the intelligence, the FBI has roles with and foreign and domestic military and medical families involved with a John DeMoro and a Joe DeMoro, with my educator, my fifth grade teacher, and people involved. I didn't know he was actually in my fifth grade class. I only saw him there one time. I only saw him one time on the campus of Southstein Middle School too, real fast, with a Mendez, real fast. The only time I ever saw him on campus. Someone's been telling them to, like, people I don't even know, to pretend they know me behind my back. And if I say that, they'll pretend I don't run. That's why I'm making that exception. I note that they were making a fake exception, and they know that this is what they are communicating to me. Where how I caught them with more then and now with the principal child abuser first forced. Then they caught him at a shopping center anyway, involved with upskirt pictures. But he had other digital crimes, worse, and other medical and sexual offenders of kids with women roles, women judges too. Their motivations are just their roles with scams. Everyone's speaking through other. Hear no evil, see no evil. Same with the people who answer the phones at the news locations. Oh, but that couldn't be true. But that's why they're just faking and changing whole phone transcripts, faking and changing digital evidences. As collusions also note with a principal upskirt nature, involved also with, in other words, with his prison, with other digital crimes way worse than that against the kids. And with whiting forensics increasingly has Joshua Julian and others with intelligence at my street and parallel to them, involved with investigations, investigators being and have been used remotely, criminally, foreign impulse, tactically, delusions, raw, against who they speak to, too. They're leaving out their roles. They're using the rights to lie, the rights to hide their roles with investigations, where they don't have the right to do that. So the Jennifer Kennipici will tell you this, in other words, and her mother will. And but they don't know whether she was influenced to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm, loss of roles with people with the corners of the street on Highcrest Street, the principal upskirt Nature's campus. Also, Rick Faglione repeated. There's a Brian Silver and other people involved with Connecticut's New Britain Superior Court, and these are people also recorded involved with the Connecticut's District Court and Hartford courts, involved also with Facebook personally and professionally with courts, with predicate acts, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and roles forcing that, and changing and faking digital evidences. They also threw in sticking the word extremism in there that I put it into to make it more complicated for them to lie and put fake motivations, because the differences of the guilt of the people personally involved with Facebook or the FBI director Robert Luskin or his co-defendants, their family members and their educators of their kids and their neighbors were our time collusions with predicate acts with databases at each of the campuses I went, and time use /S of collusions made between the people. I only went to a kindergarten class on Valleycrest Street 1 year, and I never knew a DeMorrow family on that street. And there are other families on that street. I don't even know their names. One of them might be, and they have similar names sounding too, as ones along all like Walk the Hill and conjunctions to Route 175, all along Route 175 with conjunctions to it. And corners of that street are people who planted evidences, who also had timed collusions recorded with the child abusers, leaders of the kids, and World Trade Center predicate acts at the same time. And they know if I'm addressed on paper, it will be brought up how they have roles with body double spots and names next to it through time, and collusion /S with a whole bunch of people involved with the state judicial branch offices and the corrections offices involved with differences, racketeering, worse than war crimes, including some black themed, KKK themed, Latino themed, and their educators, where they have people acting fights against each other. But there are collusions, increasingly with people on Two Route Highway and Hangdog Lane involved with the judicial branch offices and names next to it, with all kinds of wire mail crimes, untimely death rolls, organized crime acts and rolls, natures of it, rolls, self-value. Get me off the fake. It has something, in other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Narrative. They switch names, switch sequences, prevent writing, stick falsified police reports, roles in databases, arrays of falsified police reports for the same falsified police report, made confessions, not just to me, to the breaching method. A whole bunch of other countries are involved at and next to the campuses, like Central Connecticut State University, with the investigators that recorded themselves, influencing people to say things and repeat things after their other was already recorded, and leaving out what that actually records and changing it with a whole bunch of different countries involved, intercities, including governors involved with a stripper place per themselves, with the people next to Central Connecticut State University's training intelligence men and women, criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw collusion /S with overt criminal enterprises and private ones in their campuses' names and their families, where how the differences of themselves as kids or as adults is exploited too, where they're putting fake motivations for why and how they're using our names, like WTNH sources with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties to me at corners of the streets with their kids, changing and faking, hiding what I recorded them doing, not letting me report it to the schools. You guys have obligations to report it to the parents, Now I'm obligated to report it to the parents directly, and they're hiding it, and they're making the kids have more means to be in needs at the same exact time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones and terrorists to hurt other people's kids. In other words, and the adults, and the difference of that roles too. These are people sick with the elderly homes too. That is recorded too. Uses of elderly homes. People speaking about the job. Anyway, you can see the roles with the congressional building, the Connecticut congressional building, and the names next to it are involved with the location /S uses criminally foreign influence recorded. Even with the newest collusion /S and the family members of the journalists and the police locations involved. Increasingly, names next to Fox Connecticut News are involved with all kinds of natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and proven child abusers, leaders of kids, years of park roles, and pretending they're legitimate intelligence, like with one's named Mendez in Hartford, Connecticut, involved intercities with Wethersfield Police Station and the New Britain Superior Court. In the hallway, involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids too, overt crimes and other natures of organized crimes at the same time. This is also relative to where and how they get stupid with subject treatments and pretending the people are stupid. And then when they have rules, keeping the people's campuses criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Little kids in Hartford, Connecticut, let alone New York City, little kids in New York City could discern clearer than day. Fake integrity, pretended other as the names of the people of the sciences. There's a torture, extortion, back-to-nature slavery method upon them clearer than day. Upon the suburbs that were designed before America's founders were born to have nature demonstrate that, to have those demonstrations blamed on other things, others ourselves. Roles, otherwise rules sensing for the breaching method at A through Z. See how the suburbs are manifest the same way from America to Russia to Ukraine? Even though they were designed for torture, extortion, and back-to nature of slavery, therefore physical, with slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies. That's not even debatable. It's even they're pretending others through books to make it appear to be debatable, because we have campuses, the differences of their guilt, overt criminal enterprise, private ones, all the different countries individually grouped and together. Now tactical from how nature communicates with the difference of human species body, of individual bodies, with all group differences being used to show us its own. Otherwise, to show us negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and demonstration of us using and of us having been forced to use systems tactical from its own, but while pretending other anyway. Many pray, vaccines, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Wethersfield police have been putting fake transcripts with other police departments too, but we have to focus on them because they are the ones with the other police departments, families, intercities involved with Wethersfield and the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices at Wethersfield. The corrections offices is right next to Wethersfield Hartford line though, and the judicial branch offices with same thing with the Glastonbury line, but it's over a bridge with the river. See, this is also exception nature with ground and relative to where and how. Sequence truth is exception nature. See, but truths are used for lies and to screen lies. And so everyone missed how at countries A through Z, how the suits and ties, counters, and exceptions are an array, self-valued, more and more needing to value their differences. Even to value wars, right? Where and how no one values that. And so they have to cite that as their motive, and that screens the breaching method. Think about how sick and what its agenda was to have those crazy laws sustained against every human difference, even native, even still. You guys can't even afford to have our founders. Our founders, we were directed to understand our founders plural as James Madison singular, only to refer to them as him. And then they went and got the president's counter-extorted. And then James Madison became a president too, But even then, he had declassified for us why and how. He still didn't have free speech. No one did. Not even the majorities of people. Not even anyone together, or they would be sent by the internationally, not just by the internationally monitored conversations, enforced, sick behind our backs, and openly fake. The differences of that too. Difference. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. Nature is showing us its difference. We are showing we have different eyes from the fish, but they're non-distinct from them too. We are distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous for that which is further hyper-simultaneous. Black people's peer. So these are people involved with triages, interstates, and intercities. People with the name Kennipici, involved with California, with foreign and domestic military, also with intelligence, also with the next to Hartford Hospital, involved with the businesses and houses like a Miano family, increasingly collusion /S with names at corners of streets near schools, and with names involved with sequence shifts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, has something to do with his roles with their roles with the golf courses too. And I know what that is. But I have to have them follow mandated law because they don't even understand it themselves. And how that's also town lines and names next to schools. A bunch of people with the Institute of Living have all kinds of organized crimes and fake transcripts, identity theft, fraud, slanders with the same house /S. And as their roles with the names at corners of streets next to school, planting evidences as ones on my street, involved also in Wethersfield, Connecticut through time, as intelligence families involved with Central Connecticut State University and all sides of it through time. And that's in New Britain, Connecticut. And these are also people next to Trinity College and roles involved with people intercities, involved with some untimely deaths, and one at Trinity College. Involved also with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants and their family members, and people involved with the kids of the leaders of the kids, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Like there are people involved with and as Kevin Harris and his family, involved putting fake things in databases and then acting for others to film illusions tied to that. Fake ties, fake natures of ties between people. And they fake ties to me at Kennipici University. I don't even know what they put. They have people that I don't know their name. Some guy punched me. He punched me a bunch of times, and then he got tired of that. In other words, and I didn't know what to do. So I just, in other words, and then they left. It has something to do with Kevin Harris, with a Brian Silver and a Leahy family. Has been putting fake ties, fake nature ties to me with people that attack me when I'm not going to look at a corner. And like all exceptions too. In other words. And they get people bigger than me that can't punch. In other words, they're like little cowards. And with identity theft fraud, so you don't know their name. They sneak up and they do that with a whole bunch of people that are faked on your side that you don't even know. Like Kevin Harris, I never had a personal conversation with him. That was involved with him with a Rick Sanfagno and recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed. They have roles setting me up, putting fake ties, fake nature ties to me, and having people time me I'm going to go around a corner and punch me as a confession of their collusion /S with corners of buildings and with corners of streets, with people that fake transcripts and databases, with medical and sexual offenders of kids, and involved with the leaders of the kids. There's a Mr. Murphy involved also with people from Korea, involved with a Kevin Harris, involved with his daughter, who is reportedly his girlfriend. And Kevin Harris and other ties to the leaders of kids, the kids of leaders of kids, told lies about me, by people tied to them, including sexual and intimate ties to the families of retired police chiefs have an 80 territorial drive, increasingly involved with the whiting forensics, and with people like with the campuses planting predicate acts, fake ties, fake natures, and ties to people, even pretending things that were recorded on campuses, filmed 24/7, that weren't at all. I never, like for example, I never saw Eric Burgess on the campus of Central Connecticut State University in my life. The FBI director and the Britain Superior Court and Harper courts confessed and demonstrated that he should not have confessed those things to me. But see, they have the rules with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the depositions of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members. They were planting fake things too. With court, like a court involved themselves with that to cover up what they were doing at West Hartford locations, and with foreign and domestic military. And in other words, with the deposition, which should have been held off, not with the court's involvement. They offered to do it because the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, he was a defendant. Most times, an FBI director is a defendant in a RICO suit is going to be from someone filing from inside a prison, which that's never going to work out because they're going to, in other words, because of the torture /S method there to keep people's mouths shut and about what's actually recorded, as the collusions that the prisons and the state corrections offices has had with all kinds of natures of crime scenes, and time to use /S of the differences of the natures of the crimes, increasingly where and how people make subject treatments and pretend not and change and fake what people say on a mass scale. There are all kinds of experts who value, criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, or readings of statutes and precedents, and just the right to lie and change and fake it what others say on a mass scale where they're not supposed to. But see, that's just the precedent of what they do. Take your meds. Increasingly, people involved with medications at Hartford Hospital have roles with sexual and medical offenders of kids, fake transcripts, and fake ties to the kids and to the adults and the families around their own kids, including their roles personally and professionally with judges and prosecutors, speaking fake things and roles sticking fake transcripts in databases, as collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, interstates, and worse than just international, as the same families, collusions with a whole bunch of different countries next to the campuses, and with the extended family members of the foreign and domestic, overt criminal enterprises, private ones involved with differences, racketeering, cover-up, might even a lawyer. Worse than, that at corners of streets they have to hide lie progressions and the differences of guilt, where and how all the natures of investigators in their campuses, it keeps them self-valued. Roles with that self-value, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Whole careers have been criminally foreign influenced, tactically delusions raw, relative to what I said on social media and what they pretend in the background. As the interbranch refusing to get on paper legitimately, they're using wire, and they already used wire and mail crime methods, therefore have been confessing that too, and pretending other too simultaneously. As World Trade Center predicate acts roles with terrorists. Increasingly, Central Connecticut State University and Wethersfield Police have people named Scalora and people that say that they're cousins of them, also involved with predicate acts on my street and with some untimely deaths roles with the Wethersfield Police and their roles with the town offices and the judicial branch offices and corrections offices with the unmarked police forms and their roles with the different types of drugs and all that. Not the way they're pretending. They're all involved offensively with identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake motivations too, and screening their actual motivations because they are used criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. Get me off the fake conversations with them too. Fix the databases. Please, California, get them on paper, one name and sequence with the Wethersfield Police. And the roles with the Covington Street, with on the side of Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut, with a leasing agent and people that work for him and his son is involved also with the houses next to there, with various natures of federal evidences crimes and drugs and medicines crimes with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and the only people allowed to counter. They have prosecutors, judges, investigators involved with Hartford courts, the Brit Superior Court, Eastern States Narcotics Drug Task Force, the state judicial branch offices, corrections offices. They have military too, and their roles with state police, even the Coast Guard, increasingly involved too. Foreign and domestic military, in other words, intercities, whiting forensics, Middletown locations, people in places tied to this Miano family, and these people on Elm Street. I don't even know their names. The ones that were put in 2 times. I took a cooking class too. People involved with that, increasingly involved with predicate acts against me, and their time collusions with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, Christine Bedard, and then Christine Tardet, and then they said the name Christine, but they didn't give the whole name. Is one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. She doesn't even know the extent to herself. Influenced to repeat fake things and collusions with the Miano family and his educators and his roles with a whole bunch of different countries and people on my street involved with sequence shifts and federal evidences, crimes, child abuses with him, and with his roles with a whole bunch of people with Newington, with foreign and domestic military too. People that lied to my cousins about me, and probably with them too. In other words, and my aunt and uncle, probably with them too. It doesn't matter. I'm playing games. These are people with the World Trade Center predicate acts. I want them on paper, one name and sequence. Get them off the baking change. Get them on paper into branch, on paper now. Because these people from other areas with sequence shifts and increasingly from intercities connected to my street, in other words. And the area and the people tied to them with the wire crimes of the police, false flag police reports since I was a kid. They won't give me writing. Get them on paper now.